If you're standing in the backyard staring up at the night sky and thinking, I need a telescope that actually works for me, not just a shiny piece of tech, you're not alone. Most people who dip their toes into amateur astronomy quickly learn that a big spec sheet can sound impressive, but at the end of the day you really care about whether the thing sets up without a drama, holds its position while you're chasing that bright Jupiter, and lets you get solid views without spending a fortune on upgrades you'll never use. That hesitation is exactly what I felt before I even looked at the Celestron Cgx 11 Edgehd and its companion 10-inch Schmidt Cassegrain. I spent a few evenings reading forums, watching a couple of setup videos, and comparing the numbers to what real backyard astronomers actually say they need. The link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. Let's start with the fundamentals. The Cgx 11 Edgehd is basically a combination of a high-end 11-inch Edgehd optical tube and Celestron Cgx equatorial mount, which claims a 55-pound payload and computerized tracking. In plain English, that means you have a fairly large aperture that can gather a lot of light, and a mount that should keep your target centered for long-exposure imaging or for comfortable planetary observation. The appeal is clear. You could, theoretically, pull out a stunning view of the Andromeda Galaxy or keep Saturn's rings in view while you adjust focus. The reality, however, hinges on a few practical details that most spec sheets gloss over. Who should consider this setup? If you're already comfortable with a basic Dobsonian or a small refractor and you've spent at least a couple of evenings wrestling with a finder scope, a motorized mount, and a laptop for alignment, the Cgx 11 starts to make sense. It's also a good fit for anyone who plans to do serious deep sky imaging or wants a versatile instrument that can both show planets and nebulae in decent detail. The Edgehd optics reduce field curvature and coma, so you get flatter images across a larger field, a real advantage when you're trying to capture a wide nebula or a star cluster. For a family that wants a on-sea-and-furl telescope that grows with them, the package could feel like a solid investment. On the flip side, you should skip this if you're a total beginner who isn't ready to spend extra time on polar alignment, software updates, and occasional troubleshooting. The Cgx mount, while marketed as enhanced stability, still requires a level, well-balanced tripod and a fairly precise alignment to the celestial pole. For someone who just wants to glance up and see the moon without fiddling with a hand controller, a simpler Altaz mount or a smaller Newtonian might be a less stressful choice. Also, the price point is considerably higher than a basic 8-inch reflector, so if your budget is tight, you might find more bang for your buck by putting that money into a smaller, more portable scope and upgrading later. Now let's talk about real-world use. The first time I powered up the Cgx, the biggest surprise was how much the computer-guided alignment process actually helped. The Nexstar Plus database packs over 40,000 objects, and after a quick star hop with the supplied hand controller, the mount locked onto the target within seconds. In practice, that means you spend less time wrestling with star charts and more time looking through the eyepiece. For planetary work, the tracking was smooth enough that I could keep the moon centered for a 5-minute observation without any drift, something I'd struggled with on older mounts. The Edgehd's optics lived up to their promise, delivering a crisp, high-contrast view of Jupiter's belts even at 200x magnification. The flat field meant the planet stayed sharp across the edge of the eyepiece where many cheaper scopes would start to blur. However, the enhanced stability claim does have a hidden trade-off. The Cgx mount is heavy. The whole system sits on a sturdy concrete base or a very robust tripod. When you try to move it from one spot to another, the whole unit is a handful, and you'll need extra help if you're setting it up on a balcony or a compact backyard. I also found that the motor's torque, while sufficient for an 11-inch tube, struggles a bit when you try to track objects low on the horizon. The tracking error becomes noticeable after about 10 minutes, which isn't a deal-breaker for casual planetary viewing but can be frustrating for long-exposure imaging. This is where the precision tracking label meets the practical limits of the design. Another practical consideration is the USB connection to a PC. Celestron includes the CPWI, Celestron PowerWave interface, and a software suite that lets you control the scope from a laptop. In theory, that opens up possibilities for astrophotography, focus control, and even remote operation. In practice, the software can be a bit clunky on newer operating systems, and the drivers sometimes need a reboot after updates. If you're comfortable digging into settings and updating firmware, it's manageable. Otherwise, you might spend more time troubleshooting than actually imaging. That said, the ability